We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Wednesday. Had quite an entertaining day yesterday. A lot of stuff happening. So, we have some things to talk about on today's program. Just want to tell you, yesterday afternoon into the evening, I took some time to relax. I did a number of TikToks earlier in the day, and then my wife and I, and my brother and his wife, and a couple of nieces and one of the nieces' kids. We all went out to a place called TCO. Now, if you're not from Minnesota, you may not know what that means. TCO is a place where the Minnesota Vikings hold training camp. It's kind of an amazing place. They've got quite a facility. They've got a big practice field. They've got their own little stadium in there. And they have a lot of things for kids, games, and all kinds of shit. And every year we go out to one of them just to kind of watch what's going on and see the Vikings getting ready for yet another season. Hopefully it's a good one. But that's what I did last night. So it was kind of nice to step away from the news because earlier in the day, shit went crazy. There was a lot to talk about. I think I put up 9 or 10 TikToks. Yeah, it was busy. Fortunately, there was a lot of material, so it wasn't hard to put that many TikToks up. And we'll talk about that in a moment. As we start things out on this particular program, we have a number of emails. And this email kind of starts in a weird way. And I'll just tell you up front, this is coming from Roy, and he's basically informing me about a movie I talked about in the last podcast. You know, I think it was called Being There, and it starred Peter Sellers, but I couldn't remember all the parts to it. So Roy was good enough to send me an email to clear that up for me. He didn't set this up at all. He just went into it. So here's what he says. Starring Peter Sellers as a mentally challenged caretaker of an abandoned home to be torn down for new construction in Washington, D.C., forced to leave the home and was hit by a car with the wife of a consultant to the president, taken for treatment and wound up in the consultant's home, got all his information from television because he gave these stupid little sentences. Everyone thought he was brilliant. His name was Chance, the gardener. Everyone thought it was Chauncey Gardner. At the end, because he could be manipulated, they were thinking of running him for president. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make. Donald Trump is one of these idiots that just says things and people turn it into important or specific messages. If you really listened to Donald Trump and took him at his word, you would understand that he is probably illiterate, certainly ignorant, inarticulate at best, and just an absolute fool. The only people that don't think he's a fool are the people that are more foolish. And unfortunately, we have a fair amount of those folks in the Republican Party, specifically within the MAGA fucking group. All right. Thank you, Roy. Appreciate that. Appreciate you updating me on something I was talking about when I didn't know really what I was talking about. Next one comes from Jace from Texas. He was on the show recently. Hey, Mike, sending you a screenshot from a Raw Story article, how the crazy-ass Republican base is wanting the GOP to impeach Biden. All this BS is coming from Don the Con, of course. He's getting prosecuted for crimes, and they want Biden to face the same. The article quotes Republican Representative Don Bacon, who is from a Biden-winning area in New England, saying it's obvious Joe lied, and we need impeachment investigations to find the evidence. What the fuck? The evidence that doesn't exist. These Republicans, even the so-called moderates, have lost their fucking minds. Donors are a bit concerned it may backfire. You think? I say, bring it, but I'm not sure McCarthy has the spine to do it. He probably won't survive being majority leader if he doesn't. Second screenshot, also from Raw Story, is about Don the Con complaining about Biden embracing the Dark Brandon nickname. and promoting a new coffee cup. The one I mentioned the other day on your show when Fox News were losing what is left of their feeble minds. Just more proof the fuck your feelings crowd are a bunch of snowflakes, or as I like to call them, pussy ass bitches. Dish it out, but they can't take it. Typical bully. Till next time, your buddy Jace from Texas. Well, thank you, Jace. And yeah, I read about that too. Uh, Either Donald Trump or the MAGA folks are pushing for this impeachment investigation. The donors are concerned about it because we know every investigation that the Republicans have had thus far have been little more than an embarrassment to the Republican Party. This one would be a huge embarrassment. So that's why I say go ahead, bring it. See what happens. I mean, even if they were able to pull off an impeachment, it'll never get through the Senate. It'll be a joke. The Republicans will take the heat. And then when 2024 comes along, they're going to get their asses kicked. And, you know, that's the thing I don't understand. They're doing everything they can to deal with this primary. They want Donald Trump to win it, and I want Donald Trump to win it too. I don't think he'll be around to win it, but if he wins it, then it's almost a gimme for Joe Biden. Joe Biden will kick Donald Trump's ass with all the investigations, the indictments, the court cases. Donald Trump won't have time to change his fucking diaper. He will be just buried in legal shit. And I hope that happens. I hope they hold on to Donald Trump. They're going to fucking lose. All right, this one came from the rationalboomer.com page. A note somebody left comes from Randall. He says, absolutely love your TikToks. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Randall. I appreciate that. And if you're not listening to the podcast, tune into the podcast. But of course, if you're not listening to the podcast, you didn't hear that. So I don't even know why I said that. Thank you, Randall. I appreciate it. All right. The next one comes from Denise. We haven't heard from her in a while. She says, hi, Mike. I've been catching up on your podcast, and I heard the one where a listener called Old Soul wondered about Trump saying the government was going after the Catholic Church, but not knowing why he said it. Jim Jordan had brought that up on Fox News, and in committee, the FBI had sent undercover agents into the church to find the people molesting children. Apparently, Republicans felt this was FBI attacking the church. Clearly, we know there's a problem with child molestation in the Catholic Church in a big fucking way. I would hope the FBI sent somebody in there to try to stop this shit, because we can't count on the Catholic Church to stop it. All they do is take these people and move them to different spots. Clearly, this is a big problem. And if the Republicans were truly concerned about child trafficking or molestation, they would be behind this too. So they talk a good game, but when it comes down to it, they really don't care about child trafficking. They just see this as a possible way of trying to burn Joe Biden, and it ain't working. Now, Denise goes on to say, also, I heard you read an email from a listener wondering why Jack Smith has not gone after Congress for the J6 insurrection. I read an article about 4, maybe 5 months ago that he hired a team of prosecutors to do nothing but investigate Congress's involvement in J6. Don't worry, Jack is on it. I also would like to be on the show with Lisa if she's okay with that. Keep up the great work on your podcast. I never miss it. Thank you, Denise. Yeah, I also heard that there's a rumor going around that there are going to be some indictments in sitting members of Congress. And I think that's absolutely important. We need to nail these people. And when we nail these people, this will tamp down some of the rhetoric and bullshit that's going on right now. As I've said, once you indict some of these members of Congress, they're not going to be worried about Donald Trump anymore. They'll be worried about saving their own asses. Now, Denise, as far as you being on the show with Lisa, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. We need to have more women on the show. We need to have more women on the show. So I would like to set that up. I'm going to be gone next week in Savannah. I could probably still do it, but it might be difficult. But if nothing else, I will be back on Thursday. We could do it Thursday night or Friday. Let's talk about that. Let's trade some emails between Denise and Lisa and myself, and we'll see if we can work that out. And if anybody else wants to be on the show, that doesn't preclude them from being on. We can have more than 2 guests. We've done it once before. And I wanted to mention something else, and I don't want to sound like I'm patronizing, but we haven't had, I don't believe we've had a person of color as a guest on the show. Maybe we have. Well, Trevor is Asian, but if there are people of color out there in the audience that want to be on the show, I encourage you to do that. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I have a pretty big following of people on TikTok that are people of color, of all colors. And I'd be happy to put them on the show too, give them a voice on the show. And I think that that would be good. But Lisa and Denise, if you want to come on the show, we can do it. I'm thinking Thursday, maybe Friday of next week. I'll be coming back in town Thursday afternoon, so that shouldn't be a problem. All right, the next email, let's see who this is from. Oh, it's a long one, so it's Eric. Always good to hear from Eric. He was just on the show. He's got some great insights, very knowledgeable, and we always like to hear from Eric. Eric is down in Iowa. All right, Eric said, now I just want to say something too. Some people have come to me and they hear a noise when I do the podcast, and they might think it's some noise emitting from me. It's not. I got a chair here that's really squeaky and it makes noises. So trust me, if I made that kind of noise, that motherfucking thing would have been edited out anyhow. So the chair is squeaky, and I apologize for that. Maybe I'll get some oil or something and get that straightened away. But probably not, because I'm a lazy fucker. Anyway, Eric starts out by saying, the more we hear about Judge Aileen Cannon, the crazier it sounds that she is a federal judge with a lifetime appointment. In her limited time as a federal judge, it sounds like she has mishandled every case that has come her way. She violated a defendant's constitutional rights by closing the jury selection to the public. She forgot to swear in a jury in a case. There is everything involved in the special master's case. Now she's proven yet again she probably shouldn't be anywhere near a case involving Trump. The latest issues probably will be enough for the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals to force her recusal. Apparently, she filed in an order that the D.C. grand jury is still collecting evidence and basically suggests that Trump and company should file for a dismissal. I think she might grant it if they did, and I'd be worried that she'd grant it so that Jack Smith wouldn't be able to just indict them again. I think that's a real fear, Eric. I was thinking about how Aileen Cannon ended up over the district that includes Miami. I don't know if it was planned, but if it was, you know that Donnie didn't come up with it. If she is this incompetent, it really makes you question how many of the judges Trump appointed are just like her. I agree. They didn't appoint people based on their legal talents. It was about whether or not they would be friendly to the Republicans. I know the only real way to remove her is impeachment. That's almost impossible. However, maybe the Democrats should consider creating a special counsel-like position to look into all Trump-appointed judges and justices. Maybe this should be a partisan council, bipartisan council, like the January 6th committee, though it should probably be investigated by people outside Congress and then impeach the judges or justices deemed unqualified by this council. Well, Eric, I think you're onto something there, but I just don't honestly think anything's going to happen until after the 2024 election. Jack Smith is not a dumb man. He sees what the possibilities are here with Aileen Cannon. And if he thinks he needs to get her kicked off the case, you can trust that he'll be on it. Eric goes on to say, now comparing Aileen Cannon to Judge Chutkan in D.C. Judge Chutkan is not playing Donnie's games. She set a deadline of Monday at 5 p.m., didn't move it. Then she said, find a time for the hearing on order of protection between the 9th and the 11th. Well, Donnie's lawyer said, how about the 14th? And she's like, nope, I said the 11th. So the 11th it is. She's acting exactly how I'd expect a federal judge to act. She's not going to give Donnie any breaks. Thanks, Eric. And that's why Donald Trump says he can't get a fair trial from her, because she's not in his pocket. She's going to be straight about this. And Donald Trump knows he can't win a case where everything is straight, fair, and honest. He needs the edge. And this judge, Judge Chutkan, won't give him any edge at all. That's the only way Donald Trump can win. Donald Trump is clearly guilty of these crimes, and he will be found as such when it's all said and done. He needs somebody like Aileen Cannon who's going to try to game the situation for him. And Judge Chutkan, she's not the one. All right. This is something I wouldn't normally talk about, but God damn it. It was just the biggest news story you could possibly find. The brawl in Montgomery, Alabama. Yeah, that was a big one. Now we know what happened. We have a bunch of white racists on a pontoon boat. And I'm pissed about that because I have a pontoon boat. And that makes people with a pontoon boat look bad. You motherfuckers. Anyway, they park where they're not supposed to park. A bigger boat's coming in. The security guard, an African-American man, comes in and tells them to move. Well, of course, these dumb fucks don't want to move. And instead of just doing what they're supposed to do, they argue and then they get violent. And I still remember seeing the video of this larger black security guard. And he's not stepping back at all. He throws his hat in the air as if that's a signal, like a bat signal. Come on, guys. Now, I would never have thought that there would be a bunch of people that would jump in, but God damn it, if it wasn't. These white guys thought they were tough. This is how bullies work. When they have the advantage, they're all in. But when they fuck around and they find out and all of a sudden it evens up or it goes the other way, they get scared. They're gutless fucking cowards. But what was amazing about this is how many people came out and absolutely whooped the shit out of these racist white motherfuckers. Now, as I understand it, there were 3 arrest warrants issued. One to a 48-year-old man, one to a 25-year-old man, and one to a 23-year-old man. Now, I think the 48-year-old man turned himself in because I saw a mugshot. He did not look good. He did not look good. I don't know if the other 2 have came into the police hands, but they will catch them all. Now, it struck me with as many people that were involved in this fight, they only got 3 white guys. Now, I'm not surprised that the African-American folks that came out to help, there were some white folks too that came out to help. They weren't arrested, at least at this point. And it's because these guys clearly started it. And there is no question about it because we have fucking video. Okay. But the thing about it is people are just fucking hilarious on social media. They're coming up with all kinds of memes for this fight. Everybody's freaking out, loving this fight, loving the fact that presumably Trump-la-fucks are getting theirs. I did a TikTok. I tell you what, if you're on TikTok and you ever want to go viral, if you get a hot news story, I didn't know this going into it. I never thought about it. But if there's a hot news story and there's a lot of talk on the internet about a news story like this brawl in Montgomery, do a TikTok about it. And that motherfucker will go viral. I did it earlier yesterday, and at last check, that had 250,000 views. That was a story I wasn't even going to talk about because it's really not in my realm normally. But the shit that people are coming up with about this incident. You remember there was a guy who jumped off a boat, swam across the water, and got up on the deck or the dock and waded into the fight. You remember him? Yeah, there's a meme of him swimming, and they're calling him Scuba Gooding Jr. And then they got a meme with a Barbie with all the Barbie stuff going on, a picture of a Barbie with a small folding chair in her hands, and it's called Bama Bitch Barbie. Wow. Wow. So anyways, that happened. There's only 3 people that are going to be arrested. Now, a lot of you might be saying, well, there's other guys out there that were guilty. Yeah, they probably were. These 3 were probably the most blatant and egregious. But remember, the other people that don't get arrested, if they're going on social media, they are going to be watching this video over and over again, watching them get their asses kicked over and over again. And I was thinking about something. You know how the Russian or Republican trolls come to our social networking pages, and they constantly troll shit? I think what we should do is go to every social media platform, Truth Social, Telegram, whatever the fuck else they use, and do nothing but post that video over and over and over and over again. Just inundate them with that video, because these people live off the fact in their minds that they're the tough guys. We can take down the Democrats. Well, that's not quite how it went in Alabama, the Bama brawl. And they need this shoved in their face continually, over and over again, just to point out who the fuck they are and how big of cowards they are and how big of losers they are. All right. Now, there was a news story that came out last night that didn't have to do with Donald Trump directly, and it's a big news story. It happened in Ohio. Now, in Ohio, there's going to be a vote on amending the state constitution to make abortion legal, like we saw in other states. In spite of what's going on with Roe v. Wade, the individual states can say it's still legal here. We have it here in Minnesota and some other states that Republicans didn't want it to happen. Just like Ohio, the Republicans don't want to legalize abortion. The problem with that is that the vast majority of people, Republican or Democrats, it doesn't matter, they do support Roe v. Wade. So this isn't a good issue for Republicans to wrap their arms around, but still they do. So they knew this vote was coming up in November, okay? And apparently they didn't like their odds, because they tried to do something to game this situation. Knowing they would probably lose in the November election, they came up with another election that happened yesterday. And this election was basically saying that, since you can amend the Constitution, the state constitution, with a simple majority, like just more than 50%, they decided to put up for vote, making it so that if you want to amend the Constitution, it has to win by 60%. Now, we've heard that story before. That's what happened in the Senate. It's a bullshit rule, and the filibuster and all that bullshit. But the Republicans wanted to make it, okay, if you want to vote for making abortion legal, in this instance, you got to get 60% of the vote for it, for legalizing abortion, thinking that would be the thing that would game the situation for them. Now, they did it in August, assuming, well, it's hot, nobody's going to come out. So let's just try to sneak it through. We'll get all the Republicans out there voting, and we'll make it so that when it comes up in November, they'll need to get 60%. But what they didn't account for was the fact that a lot of people saw that as the government trying to take rights away from them. And since the vast majority of people do support Roe v. Wade, they got a little worked up. And voters in Ohio successfully thwarted a Republican attempt to make it harder to pass a November pro-choice ballot measure. Now, on Tuesday, Ohioans voted to defeat Issue 1, a ballot initiative to raise the threshold for altering the state constitution from a simple statewide majority to 60%. Although a simple majority has been the standard in Ohio for 100 years. Anti-choice Republicans in the state called for a special election to raise the vote threshold in a preemptive attempt to block. This is not unlike what happened in Florida when Ron DeSantis decided he was going to run for president, but in that state it said you had to resign your position in order to run for president. Of course, the Republican legislature changed that so that Ron DeSantis could run for president and not resign his position. They're going to regret that one when everything falls apart, even worse than it already is in Florida. Now, Ohioans' support for abortion access and reproductive freedom has never been in question. NARAL Pro-Choice America said in a statement issued Tuesday evening, from defeating Issue 1 tonight to submitting nearly twice the amount of signatures needed to get a measure protecting abortion access on the ballot in November, Ohio voters have made clear that they will settle for nothing less than reproductive freedom for all Republicans. Republicans should be ashamed of their efforts to subvert the will of voters. Now, despite many Republican claims that the special election was about protecting Ohio from out-of-state special interest, it was ultimately a proxy fight over abortion rights. It's also typical of the Republicans. Oh, this has nothing to do with abortion, when it has everything to do about abortion. It's the only thing about abortion. Anyways, they failed. They lost again. Ohio's Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, an outspoken anti-choice leader, was one of several Republicans who attempted to hide the real intent of Issue 1. Once again, Republicans lying to their constituents. He told the Washington Examiner last month that Issue 1 has never been exclusively about abortion. Now, we've heard this story so many times. We know exactly what they are doing. They deny it. But if they would have won, that's the first thing they would have attacked. All right. Now, during the crucial election, progressives funneled in millions from outside groups to mislead the people of Ohio. This is what the Republicans are saying. The group said, sadly, attacks on state constitutions are now the national playbook for the extreme pro-abortion left. Yeah. Now, the outcome, which makes it easier to pass the pro-choice constitutional amendment later this year, is a huge win for abortion rights advocates in Ohio, and a huge loss for Republicans, not only in Ohio, but all over the country. Now, if it passes, the November amendment will effectively invalidate any bans tied up in court that would seek to restrict abortion before fetal viability, which is around 22 to 24 weeks of pregnancy. These include a 6-week abortion ban that briefly went into effect after Roe v. Wade fell in 2022. But that was blocked in court. And they're still waiting for the Ohio Supreme Court to rule on this. Now, the special election is also an important reminder that whenever the public has been given the opportunity to directly vote for abortion rights, it has continually protected access in both red and blue states. Remember, Kansas overwhelmingly voted to keep abortion protections in their state constitution. See, that's what Ohio was doing. They saw what happened in Kansas and they said, we can't have that here. So what we need to do is make it harder for it to pass so we don't have to deal with the same shit and be surprised and embarrassed like the Kansans. Well, they tried. The pro-choice folks saw it differently, and as hard as they've tried, they were defeated in their attempt to make it harder to pass the pro-choice bill. So now we wait till November, and Ohioans will have the opportunity to vote on that, and it will be a fair election. Instead of having to get 60%, they will get 50% or just over 50% to win it. So I suspect in Ohio, what's ultimately going to happen is that we are going to see what happened in Kansas and other places happen in Ohio. These Republican swing states, they may be against Joe Biden, but they are pro-choice. And the constitutions in these states will reflect it, and it will drive Republicans fucking crazy. And I'm all for that. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Well, we were talking about Judge Tanya Chutkan. You remember that? We were talking about her, and she's overseeing the case of Donald Trump's upcoming trial regarding January 6th and the insurrection and all the shit that's going on there. And we've compared her to Aileen Cannon, and there is no comparison. Tanya Chutkan is a no-nonsense lawyer or judge. She doesn't take any shit, and that's bad news for Donald Trump. Now, we remember that when Jack Smith asked for this order of protection, Judge Chutkan said, well, we want a response from Donald Trump's team by Monday. And Donald Trump's team says, that's not going to work. How about Thursday? And Judge Chutkan said, fuck yourself. How about Monday? It's coming Monday. You have plenty of time. No dicking around here. So they provided their response, which was absolute bullshit. And of course, Jack Smith responded or rebutted what they said. And so the judge says, we got to have a meeting. We got to talk about this. Now, Donald Trump doesn't have to go, but they need to figure this out, this order of protection. Now, the thing about it is the order of protection is pretty common in cases. This isn't new. This isn't a crazy idea. What Jack Smith is worried about with Donald Trump, with his continuing to flap his gums, is that in discovery, he's going to send over a bunch of evidence, and Donald Trump may release some of that evidence or talk about some of that evidence in the general public. Now, a lot of this evidence has come from grand juries, and they're supposed to be secret. So this is where the problem lies. Now, when Donald Trump's team responded to this, they want Donald Trump to have complete freedom to release information or say whatever he wants. Now, Donald Trump is trying to make this out to being that Jack Smith is trying to take his First Amendment right away, which is just totally not true. So they're at loggerheads here, and they have to get this thing figured out. The federal judge overseeing the new case Judge Tanya Chutkan, scheduled a hearing for this Friday to consider prosecutors' request for a production order limiting what the former president can say about the case. Now, I would imagine she's going to be in favor of that, given that Donald Trump is currently threatening her, threatening Mike Pence, who will be a witness, which is witness tampering. She may have a problem with that. And I think that she may have some strong words for Donald Trump's lawyers. They're going to try to dick around. They're going to try to finagle some way to get what they want, but they aren't going to get what they want in this case. It's just not going to happen. It's not right, and this judge isn't having it. Now, Judge Tanya Chutkan's decision to schedule the hearing comes a day after Trump's legal team asked her to reject the protective order request, arguing that it restricts his First Amendment rights. Like I said, that's absolute bullshit. That's not what they're asking. They're simply asking that he doesn't release evidence in the case. We know that Donald Trump knows he can't win in court. He just can't. So for whatever reason, he and his lawyers are trying to take it public and try to win in the court of public opinion. I don't know what good that does. It's going to go through court, and if he's guilty, he's going to be sentenced, regardless of what all the other Republicans think. But when you think about it, that's all they really have here. That's all they've got. They're going to lose. They know they're going to lose. So the only thing they can suggest, and what they're going to try to do, is the very same thing they did in the election. If I lose, it's a hoax. It's been rigged. It's fake. It didn't really happen. He's going to try to pull that same thing off in court. By that time, he's going to be so deep in other legal charges and convictions, he won't know what to fucking do. He's doing this now because this is all he knows how to do, and it's really his only option. Now, I'd heard that, not unlike you'd expect out of Donald Trump and his lawyers, this case on Friday, they said, could we do it Monday or Tuesday? And Tanya Chutkan said, no, we're doing it fucking Monday. Fuck yourself. Now, shortly before Chutkan scheduled Friday's hearing, Trump went after her on his social media site, Truth Social, pointing out that she was nominated by former President Barack Obama. So what? Aileen Cannon was appointed by you. He's accusing her of having a conflict of interest in the case. What would that be? You can't just say it. You got to have a specific situation, and he doesn't have that. Chutkan is known for being one of the toughest sentencers of the January 6th rioters. Oh, well, that may be the case. Sorry, that's not a thing in court. Just because she's a tough judge and does what's right, that doesn't give you the option of trying to get her to recuse herself. It's not going to happen. Now, federal prosecutors in the case made the protective order request with Chutkan last Friday, seeking to block Trump or his legal team from disclosing government court materials to anyone other than people involved in the legal proceedings ahead of the trial, including grand jury witness testimonies and materials obtained via sealed searches. See, the other problem with this is there are witnesses to the grand jury, and if their names get out, that puts them in danger, because we know how Donald Trump and all his little Trump-la-fucks behave. There will be death threats. There will be all kinds of shit. In fact, I'm sure Judge Chutkan is already getting threats. Now, while such protective orders are not uncommon, prosecutors said it's especially important that Trump be put under one because of his propensity for posting inflammatory statements on his social media accounts. Not issuing the protective order, they argued, could have a harmful, chilling effect on witnesses or adversely affect the fair administration of justice in this case. Now, Trump's attorneys responded later Friday asking to limit any protective order to generally sensitive material, and said the broader one sought by prosecutors would infringe on Trump's ability to campaign for the GOP's presidential nomination. Well, it wouldn't if you didn't bring up the cases in your campaigning. Maybe you should talk about the policies or what you might do to help this country. Maybe that would help you in the campaign. But the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump doesn't have a chance in hell of winning a general election in November of 2024. Now, his lawyer said this in a trial about First Amendment rights. That's the first problem. It's not about First Amendment rights. Jack Smith said specifically in the indictment that it's not about what he says, it's about what he done. The government seeks to restrict First Amendment rights. They wrote worse, it does so against its administration's primary political opponent during an election season in which administration, prominent party members, and media allies have campaigned on the indictment and proliferated its false allegations. See, that's the other thing they keep saying. Oh, the only reason Donald Trump is being investigated and indicted is because Joe Biden is doing that to his opponent because he's afraid that Donald Trump will win. Well, we know that Joe Biden has no sway over the DOJ. He's kept his hands off of it, unlike what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump did, in fact, weaponize the DOJ, but Joe Biden has not. Now, the courts placed Trump under similar protective orders in his two other cases. So this ain't new, which concern hush money payments made to the adult film star Stormy Daniels, and of course, the classified documents. Now, the funny thing about Donald Trump, he's like an incorrigible child. Tell him not to do something, you might as well forget about it. He's going to fucking do it. So Trump kept up his attacks on special counsel yesterday, even though he knows he's going through this and he's going to be spanked for it. And he vowed to continue talking about his criminal cases, even as prosecutors sought a protective order to limit the evidence that Trump and his team could share. Now, in an early voting state, New Hampshire, Trump assailed Smith as a thug prosecutor and a deranged guy, a week after being indicted on felony charges for his efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Now, the former president, Donald Trump, lobbed insults at Smith just days after the Department of Justice asked a judge to approve a protective order stopping Trump from publicly disclosing evidence. Donald Trump is daring Judge Chutkan to do something. And that's probably not a good thing with a judge like Judge Chutkan, because she ain't going to fuck around with this. Federal prosecutors contend that Trump is seeking to try the case in the media rather than the courtroom. Well, of course he is. He can't win in the courtroom. All he does is have the court of public opinion, okay? But that doesn't do any good. That doesn't keep him out of jail. But what it does do, if he gets people convinced that he's being cheated, he's being wronged, it's all rigged against him, he thinks that will put pressure or create chaos in the whole process and maybe give him some kind of loophole to get out. It won't. It can't. But again, Donald Trump doesn't have anything else, so he's doing whatever he can. Now, the judge overseeing the case has scheduled a hearing over the protective order on Friday morning. Trump, after his rally on Tuesday, made a post on his social media network attacking the judge, U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan. Now, I'm guessing the judge heard this stuff, and I have a feeling it may come up in conversation on Friday. She's not going to be too happy about this. Now, what she can do ultimately, if he continues doing this, she can sanction him, fine him, call him in for more terse lectures, but she can also put him in jail. He's out right now in this case, and in the other cases for that matter, on a conditional release. And those conditions have to do with shutting your fucking mouth, in spite of the fact that Donald Trump says he's going to keep talking. And I hope and I pray he keeps talking. Because while Judge Aileen Cannon or the judge in New York may be reluctant to do something, Judge Chutkan, I don't think she's going to be reluctant. Now, some people think, well, he just wants to be put in jail so he can be the martyr and help win the 2024 election. I don't know that that's true. Donald Trump doesn't like the idea of other people having control over him and him having no control. If he's going to sit in prison awaiting his trial, that's not going to be a good experience for a 77-year-old fucking narcissist. They'd have to put him in some kind of confinement where nobody else is around him because no doubt somebody's going to take a shot at the former president. Now, Trump's lawyers have argued that the prospective order is too broad and would restrict his First Amendment rights speech, as I said. And so Trump said, regardless, I will talk about it. They're not taking away my First Amendment rights. Now, they aren't taking away your First Amendment rights. It's an excuse. It's bullshit that you're using like you always use. But go ahead. Let's see what Judge Chutkan says. Donald Trump is out and out daring her to do something. And I don't think she's the one to dare or to push or to try to bully or lie to or bullshit. It's not going to happen. She's not going to stand for that stuff. Now, of course, it's a tough thing to put a former president in prison awaiting a trial. But at some point, that's all you got left. If you can't shut this guy up, if he continues to ignore your directives, what are you going to do? You got to put the motherfucker in jail and shut him up. Now, Donald Trump said he needs to be able to respond to reporters' questions about the case on the campaign trail, something he has not made a practice of doing. He never talks about it because he can't, because he looks stupid. He also cited the movie 2000 Mules, which made various debunked claims about mail ballots, drop boxes, and ballot collection in the 2020 presidential election. I heard Republicans talking about 2000 Mules, and it was absolutely a fucking joke. Everything about that movie has been debunked, yet Republicans still quote it, still bring it up as if it's real. It's not real. It never was real. It never will be real. It's all bullshit. It was a movie put together by Kash Patel, Donald Trump's buddy, and a guy that's fed money to Donald Trump and some of his inner circle. I don't know what the fucking deal is with Kash Patel, but he is a special kind of piece of shit. Now, Donald Trump went on to say all of this will come up during this trial. In the 4-count indictment filed against Trump last week, the Justice Department accused him of orchestrating a scheme to block the peaceful transfer of power. He was told by multiple people in trusted positions that his claims were false. Everybody around him told him that he did not win. He chose not to hear it. He spread the lies anyway to sow public mistrust about the election. He knew it wasn't real. He knew there was no fraud in the elections, but he knew if he could cause enough uncertainty or chaos that he might be able to pull something out. And that's in fact what he tried to do with the whole fake electors thing and the dealing with the legislatures and the state. He was trying to play a game. It was a last-ditch effort, and he didn't do it. He didn't accomplish it, but that's all he had to do. So I think it's important to understand that something like that is going to happen with these court cases as well. Now, Trump pled not guilty to the charges. He repeated lies about the election on Tuesday, despite the fact that numerous federal and local election officials, both parties, a long list of courts, top former campaign staffers, and even his attorney general have all said there's no evidence of fraud. There was never a second of any day that I didn't believe that the election was rigged. That's what he said. But he's lying. We know he's lying. He's always fucking lying. But he's saying this is the worst thing in history and the country should be ashamed. Wow. Donnie, you're scared. You're scared and you're losing. Now, he went on to talk on Truth Social, that half-ass social media platform. And he said this, he said, so now I have full subpoena power because of the freedom of speech sham indictment by crooked Joe Biden, deranged Jack Smith, and the DOJ. It has been just reported that the unselect January 6th committee of political hacks and thugs has illegally destroyed their records and documents, wrote Trump. This is unthinkable, and fake political indictment against me must be withdrawn. Yeah, he's calling for the DOJ to withdraw the indictment. You think that's going to happen? Yeah, I don't think so. I think you're going to get more indictments, dipshit. He goes on to say the system is rigged and corrupt, very much like the presidential election of 2020. We are a nation in decline. Well, isn't that interesting? You're saying the very same things. You know, the thing about it is, before the election even happened in 2020, he was already talking about rigged elections because he knew he was going to lose. He knew he had to do something. And now he's doing the same thing with these court cases, these trials, even though he hasn't been on trial as yet. He's expecting to lose, like he was expecting to lose in the election. So now he's making excuses and claims and accusations before it happens, so that once he does lose in court, he can say, see, that's what happened. It's all fixed. It's rigged. Now, Trump is referring to a Fox News report this week that House Republicans, led by Oversight Subcommittee Chair Representative Barry Loudermilk, are alleging the now disbanded January 6th committee failed to fully preserve the records of their investigations in violation of congressional rules. In particular, they claim the Democrats on the committee disappeared files relating to Capitol security failures so they could shift blame for January 6th on Trump. That's interesting. Didn't we also hear that they turned all their records over to the FBI? This is just more bullshit. They throw something up, they pull something out of their ass, they throw it out there hoping somebody will believe it. But the fact is, nobody will believe it. Now, former committee chair Representative Benny Thompson has pushed back on this accusation, saying that Loudermilk's report is full of factual errors, and the only documents that weren't maintained were temporary documents that didn't advance the committee's investigation, while 4 terabytes of the committee's relevant information were turned over to the FBI. It's ironic that Representative Loudermilk would be screaming about this because, as we know, there are going to be some congressional members likely to get indictments. And remember Representative Loudermilk. What did he do on January 5th? Well, there's videotape of him giving tours or reconnaissance missions to the insurrectionists the day before the event, showing them all the ins and outs of the Capitol so they knew what to do when they got there on January 6th. Representative Loudermilk has bigger things to worry about than this ridiculous lie. And I tell you what, this is what I was talking about before. Just as soon as Loudermilk gets his fucking indictment, all this other stuff will go away. He will shut up because he will be running around like a chicken with his head cut off trying to save his ass. Now, the former president has escalated his attacks on the legal process as charges against him have advanced, in particular going after special counsel Jack Smith, who he's called him deranged and a crackhead, and District Judge Tanya Chutkan, whom he has demanded to be taken off the case. Now, the thing about it is Donald Trump is in desperation mode right now. He doesn't know what the fuck to do. He doesn't know what's going to happen. So he's just doing everything. And this is something I told you about this guy, having known other narcissists, malignant narcissists. They do well for a while. They're bullshit. They're gaslighting and all this works for a while. But once they get cornered, they're such prolific liars that it's inevitable they will get caught. And they won't be able to explain their way out of it. They won't be able to bully their way out of it. So once they're cornered, they are going to be unhinged, like Donald Trump is doing right now, and they will be saying virtually anything. The thing that Donald Trump doesn't understand is he doesn't have quite the power or the sway that he had when he was president. None of this shit is going to work. It's just going to make him look dumber than he already looks. Now, the case against Donald Trump over efforts to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia will likely go before the Fulton grand jury next week. Now, we thought it might be this week, but coming out of the New York Times, it sounds like Fani Willis is pulling together the grand jury next week. And at that point, they will vote as to indictments and who to indict and all that sort of shit. So based on that part, that information that's come out, it sounds like the Georgia indictments will come out next week. Don't know which day, maybe Tuesday, but they will be coming out next week. And these indictments will be devastating not only to Donald Trump, but the rest of the people that are part of this criminal organization. And I say that because she's going to be making RICO charges, which is something they use against organized crime. Now, this would be an organized crime because there were a lot of people involved, a lot of planning, a lot of strategizing. We got people like Mark Meadows. We've got people like Rudy Giuliani, Lindsey Graham. They were all in the thick of it. But it's not limited to them. We know that the foreman of the grand jury back some months said that we could expect up to 12, 13, 14, 15 people being indicted when this all comes out. Now, in the January 6th thing with Jack Smith, we only got Donald Trump in the first indictment, but there's a lot more that's going to come. There's going to be superseding indictments, and there's going to be a lot of people, including members of Congress, that will be indicted there. In this one, they may all come out at once because it's RICO. There may be 12 indictments when it's released. I think of anything, Donald Trump is worried about this one the most because it is a state court. If a Republican should become president and wants to pardon Donald Trump, they can't pardon him for anything he's convicted of in Georgia. Willis said, "The work is accomplished. We've been working for 2.5 years and we're ready to go." I guess we know that. The barricades are up. They're shutting down streets until the 18th of August, and they're ready to go. Now, the Georgia case is described in the Times report as the most expansive legal challenge yet to the efforts that Mr. Trump and his advisors, and 20 people have been told they could face charges. 20 people. Now, on Tuesday afternoon, 2 witnesses summoned to appear before the grand jury told the Times they had not yet received notices telling them to testify in the next 48 hours, meaning the case won't go before the jury until next week. So this is all kind of a guess. It's speculation. But I think the New York Times is a pretty good track record of predicting these things. So I'll go with that, that Georgia and Fani Willis will come out with indictments next week. Certainly not quick enough for a lot of folks, but it's coming. It's coming, and it will be devastating to Donald Trump and the entire Republican Party. You remember this story about the No Labels Party? You know, they're talking about a third party presidential candidate. This no labels party. They basically say, we don't believe in labels. We're not Democrats. We're not Republicans. We're for the people. Yeah. Yeah, right. Well, former Republican Rep. Fred Upton of the No Labels Project said his group would not run a third party presidential candidate if Donald Trump was on track to win in 2024. Wow. No labels, not Democrat, not Republican. But if Donald Trump appears as though he's going to win in 2024, they won't run. They will only run if it looks like Biden will win. That doesn't sound like a bipartisan, objective party. It basically tells us exactly who we knew they were. They're just a branch of the Trump-fuck party trying to do whatever they can to screw up an election. They're all about that. If Donald Trump can't win, we'll go in there and try to mess it up. But here's the deal. Who's their candidate? To this point, it seems like it's Joe Manchin, which is fucking laughable. I mean, think about it. Joe Manchin probably isn't going to win his Senate seat in 2024 for West Virginia. He's been there a long time, but I think Republicans and whatever Democrats vote for him are getting tired of his bullshit. He accomplishes nothing. He's nothing but an obstructionist like the Republican Party. Here's the thing. There are no Democrats that like Joe Manchin for obvious reasons. But there are no Republicans that like him either because, well, he's Democrat. So you really think this guy is going to be a viable candidate in 2024? I know a lot of people are worried about it. Oh, he'll just steal votes away from Joe Biden and Donald Trump will win. No. I say, bring it, motherfucker. Pour as much money as you can get into it and let's go. Let's have this third party and see what you do. I will guarantee you this. By the time 2024 comes around, the No Labels Party won't be a thing. They won't have a candidate because they know it's going to cost them a shitload of money. Donald Trump doesn't have a fucking prayer. Donald Trump lost by 7 million votes in 2020. And my guess is he'll lose by 10 million or more in 2024 because nothing has happened for Donald Trump to make him more viable, to gain him more votes. The only thing that's happened has caused him to lose support and votes. So go ahead. How many votes do you think Joe Manchin is going to get? Certainly not enough to offset 10 million votes more that Joe Biden has over Donald Trump. So fucking bring it. But my question is, if you're no labels and you're trying to be these people in the middle, why is it that you're supporting and you're trying to help Donald Trump? This is all just ridiculous bullshit and stuff we're becoming accustomed to with the Republican Party these days. Like I said, if you want to run a third party candidate, by all means, fucking do it. Throw Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in there too. The difference in votes between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is going to be so vast that these little fucks aren't going to be able to do anything. Fred Upton said, I think there's been some statements from the No Labels folks saying that if they saw that this was an effort to give Trump a victory outside of the margin of error, that at the end of the day, they would pull back and not see a ticket go forward. Oh, so now they're trying to make it out, well, we don't want to look like we're helping Donald Trump. That's exactly what the fuck you're doing. That's exactly what you're fucking doing. So he goes on to say, so we really have until July or August of next year to see how things all shape out, let alone see the candidates raise money that would have to raise to be able to compete in a fair way come November. Yeah, they're not going to get the money. They're not going to be viable. They're going to talk about this bullshit for another year and nothing is going to come out of it. All right, the last story. I didn't read this one ahead of time. I'm just kind of taking bits and pieces of it. but it had Jim Jordan involved. So I wanted to talk about it. I saw two things. I saw Jim Jordan and smoking gun. So Jim Jordan has revealed what he calls smoking gun evidence that the House Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of Federal Government has gathered against Joe Biden. Oh boy, with all that other evidence you found and exposed, I can't wait. Now, the congressman, another Republican, filed a legal briefing in an ongoing case, the state of Missouri versus Biden, which accuses the president's administration of government overreach by attempting to suppress information online. Oh, can't wait to hear that. According to Jordan and other committee members, the Biden administration called on Facebook to take down posts that suggested the COVID pandemic originated in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, a theory that has gained traction in recent months, buoyed by Biden's own Department of Energy, including in February that the virus possibly originated from a lab leak. Now, I don't know if Joe Biden and the Biden administration really went to Facebook and tried to force them to take things down, but here's what we do know. We do know that there were a lot of trolls and misinformation about COVID being put out on Facebook. Facebook did nothing to take it down. And these Russian trolls or Republican trolls were trying to put out misinformation about COVID. Now, if they're trying to put out things about COVID that aren't true, you could see why the administration would want to take them down. I mean, let's be honest, a fucking million people died of COVID. We spent those 2 or 2.5 years dealing with COVID, and we heard nothing from Republicans other than it's a hoax. It's not real. It's kind of like climate change. That's not real. Well, tell the people with the fires in California, or these hurricanes that are bigger than ever, or these storms that are flooding towns. Tell them climate change isn't a real thing. So the smoking gun that Jim Jordan has is kind of a last-ditch effort for him. He's trying to come up with something that will stain Joe Biden. He's had 2.5 years to try to, or 2 years to try to do this, and he hasn't accomplished it yet. He's accomplished nothing. He's found no evidence, no witnesses. The witnesses he said he has, one is on the run, God knows where. The other one's in jail. The other one doesn't exist. So, Jim, you go ahead. Bring out your smoking gun evidence and get laughed at again. You know it's going to happen. The bottom line is we're going to see Donald Trump and many Republicans taken down very shortly by Jack Smith and Fani Willis. And it's going to get real ugly for those motherfuckers. It's going to get bad. And I'm looking forward to it. As I've said before, if we can get the members of Congress, the people in Donald Trump's circle, the administration, if we can start getting indictments against those fucks, that changes everything. Because everybody's going to run from Donald Trump when that happens, because they're going to be more concerned with preserving their own freedom. And they're not going to have much luck with that. All right. We're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen and or watch. God knows why you want to watch. It's an old white man sitting in his living room talking about politics, for God's sake. But nonetheless, some of you watch, and I'm here for you. If that's what you want to see, I will give it to you. But I hope you have a great day today. And of course, we'll talk to you again tomorrow.